January 24th, 1848. A carpenter named James Marshall found something shiny in a mill race at Sutter's Mill in Coloma, California. By the end of 1849, 90,000 people had left everything they knew and crossed a continent to find gold. They were called the 49ers. They crossed 2,000 miles of desert, mountain, and river on foot and horseback. They climbed the Sierra Nevada, a mountain range that had already killed an entire wagon party just 2 years earlier. The Donner Party, 87 people trapped in the same mountains, only 48 survived. And the 49ers knew this. They went anyway. 1 in 5 died before reaching California. Not from outlaws, not from violence, from cholera, from starvation, from altitude, from rivers that swept men away in seconds, from mountains that didn't care how badly you wanted gold. This is how the ones who made it survived the impossible. Welcome to Old American Ways. Before we go back to 1849, if you love the real stories of how Americans survived what should have killed them, subscribe right now. Hit like if the Donner Party statistic, 87 people, only 48 survived, made you feel something. Share this with someone who thinks the gold rush was just about getting rich. Now, let's go back to the beginning, to the moment everything changed. January 1848, a mill, a river, and something shiny. When word of the gold discovery finally reached the East Coast in August 1848, it spread like a wildfire through dry grass. Newspapers ran the stories. Men quit their jobs the next morning. Farmers left their fields. Lawyers closed their offices. Doctors abandoned their practices. Teachers walked out of classrooms. The men who went in 1849 were not primarily adventurers or criminals or gamblers. They were ordinary Americans, clerks, farmers, mechanics, men who had never left their home state, men who had never slept on the ground, men who had never been more than 50 miles from where they were born. And they were going to California, by foot, by wagon, around Cape Horn, by ship, across Panama through the jungle. The two main overland routes both crossed the Sierra Nevada. Both were brutal, both were deadly. The California Trail, and the most common overland route, was 2,000 miles long. It took 5 to 6 months to walk, starting in Missouri, crossing the Great Plains, crossing the Rocky Mountains, crossing the Nevada desert, and finally climbing the Sierra Nevada. The men who chose this route needed to time it carefully. Leave too early in spring. The prairie grass wasn't grown enough to feed the oxen. Leave too late, and the Sierra Nevada passes would be closed by winter snow. The window was narrow. 6 weeks, maybe 8. Get it wrong. And you were the Donner Party. Let me tell you about what actually killed the 49ers, because it wasn't bandits, it wasn't Native Americans, it wasn't even the mountains. The number 1 killer on the Overland Trail in 1849 was cholera. Cholera is a bacterial disease spread through contaminated water. The trail followed rivers. Men camped by rivers. Men drank from rivers where other men upstream had dumped their waste. The symptoms came fast. Violent vomiting, uncontrollable diarrhea, severe dehydration. A healthy man could be dead in 12 hours. Diarists on the trail wrote about waking up in the morning and finding the man sleeping next to them dead, about digging graves every day along the trail. One traveler counted 42 fresh graves in a single 10-mile stretch. The second killer was the desert. The Nevada desert before the Sierra Nevada was 40 miles of waterless terrain. Men called it the 40-mile desert. 40 miles with no water, in summer heat, carrying everything they owned. Experienced trail guides told the 49ers, rest during the day. Cross the desert at night when it was cooler. The ones who listened survived. The ones who didn't collapsed in the heat. The third killer was the Sierra Nevada itself. The Sierra Nevada is not a gentle mountain range. It rises to over 14,000 feet. Its western slopes catch massive Pacific storms, creating some of the deepest snow in North America. In winter, passes like Donner Pass could accumulate 30 feet of snow. 30 feet. The 49ers who arrived at the Sierra Nevada late in the season faced a brutal choice. Push through now, in deteriorating weather, and risk dying in a storm, or wait until spring, in a California foothills camp, through a winter they hadn't prepared for. Both choices were dangerous. Many made the wrong one. Let me tell you how they crossed it, because crossing the Sierra Nevada in 1849 was not like hiking a mountain today. There were no trails marked, no rangers, no emergency services, no way to call for help. You went up, and you either came down the other side, or you didn't come down at all. The men who survived the crossing did so through a combination of knowledge, preparation, and help from the people who already knew the mountains. The most important survival knowledge came from Native Americans. The Miwok and the Paiute had lived in and around the Sierra Nevada for thousands of years. They knew the safe passes. They knew where water was. They knew which plants were edible. They knew when the weather was going to turn. Some 49ers hired native guides. Those men survived at significantly higher rates than those who didn't. The second key was the mule. The men who crossed with mules rather than oxen had a decisive advantage. Mules could navigate steep, rocky terrain that oxen couldn't manage. Mules could survive on less water. Mules were sure-footed on narrow mountain trails, and when desperate enough, mules could be eaten. The third key was reading the sky. Experienced mountain men could read the clouds in ways that most 49ers couldn't. A ring around the moon meant storm coming. Certain cloud formations meant 24 hours before snow. A drop in temperature combined with a specific wind direction meant turn back immediately. The men who learned these signs, from mountain men, from native guides, from experienced trail bosses, survived. The men who ignored them or didn't know them are still up there, buried under 150 years of California soil. When the 49ers finally descended into the California foothills, after 5 months of walking, after cholera, desert, and mountains, they expected to find gold lying in the streams waiting to be picked up. Some of it was. In 1848 and early 1849, and before the full rush arrived, gold was genuinely abundant. A man could pan $5,000 worth of gold in a single day. In today's money, $200,000 in a single day. But by the time most 49ers arrived, the easy gold was gone. The streams had been picked clean by the men who came before them. The surface deposits had been exhausted. What remained required enormous physical labor. Miners dug shafts into hillsides, they diverted rivers, they built elaborate wooden flumes to channel water to dry deposits. They lifted hundreds of pounds of rock by hand every day. And the environment itself was dangerous in new ways. The mining camps had no sanitation, no clean water. Men lived in canvas tents through California winters that nobody had told them about. The same cholera that stalked the trail stalked the mining camps. A disease called scurvy caused by lack of vitamin C, devastated men who lived on hardtack, beans and salt pork with no fresh vegetables for months. Gums bled, teeth fell out, joints swelled, men couldn't walk. The survival knowledge here was simple but not obvious. Eat pine needles, boil them into a tea. Native Americans had known this for centuries. Pine needle tea contains massive amounts of vitamin C. The mountain men knew it. The 49ers who learned it from those who came before kept their teeth. The ones who didn't lost them. Of the 90,000 people who came to California in 1849, most didn't get rich. The average 49er made less than he would have made staying home and working. The ones who got rich weren't usually the miners. They were the merchants who sold shovels and pans to the miners, the hotel owners, the laundry women, the doctors, the lawyers, the people who built the infrastructure that a sudden city of 90,000 people needed. Levi Strauss came to California in 1853 not to mine gold, but to sell canvas for tents. He ended up making pants tough enough for miners. You know what he called them. But here is what the 49ers actually built. Beyond the gold, they built California. The population of California went from 14,000 in 1848 to 380,000 in 1860. They built San Francisco from a small port town into one of the great cities of the world. They built roads, railroads, banks, schools, the entire infrastructure of the American West. And they did it by surviving what should have killed them: the cholera on the trail, the 40-mile desert, the Sierra Nevada in winter, the scurvy in the camps. They survived it because they learned, because they listened to the people who knew, the mountain men, the native guides, the veterans of the trail who came before them. That is what survival looks like when an entire generation of Americans faces the impossible. They don't stop, they learn, and they build something that outlasts the gold. This has been Old American Ways. Subscribe, share with someone who thinks the gold rush was just about getting rich, and tell me in the comments, which survival fact surprised you most? Old American Ways, where the past is never truly gone.